In this lesson, we're going to be talking about reflections of shapes. Your objective today is, today I will be able to reflect shapes across the x-axis, y-axis, and y equals x. Right? So we're doing 3 types of things today. So first, we're just looking at what is a reflection. A reflection, or flip, is a transformation over a line called a line of reflection. Each point of the pre-image and its image are the same distance from the line of reflection. So looking at the example, you have a shape. So this is your pre-image, is the one you start with, right? Pre-image is the one you start with. Right? So you start with an image, and then you're going to reflect it over a line. So this line here, called the line of reflection, what you reflect over. And then its image, that's the one you get after, are going to be the same distance from that line. So B and G are the same distance from that pink line. C and H are the same distance, and A and F are the same distance. Right? So it's kind of like you took it and you flip it over. Right? So we flipped the triangle over that pink line. So the image you flip it over, we're going to flip it over 3 things. You can flip it over any line you want, but we're just going to concentrate on these 3 flips. So reflecting the x-axis. Remember, x-axis is the one that goes horizontal. We're going to reflect the y-axis, so the one going up and down. We're also going to reflect the line y equals x. This is a diagonal line through the middle. It looks like this over here. When you're on a grid, it'll always go up 1, up 1, up 1 over 1, the whole way up the graph. Right? That's the other one we know. So these 3. So let's start with x-axis. So the x-axis is this one here. So we start with A and B here. You see A is 1 up. So then to get the new one, I went 1 down. So it's 1 space on each side of the x-axis. B was 3 up. 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 down on the bottom. So you see positive 3 on the top, negative 3 on the bottom. Right? For x-axis, your symbol, your x will stay the same because we're going right here, but the y is going to become negative. So positive 1, negative 1, positive 3, negative 3. So to flip the x-axis, you make your y a negative, but leave the x the same. To reflect the y-axis, so now we're flipping sideways, right? So we're going back and forth across. For this one, if you look, the x becomes negative, but the y stays the same. So over here, this is negative 2, this is positive 2. But 3 and 3 are the same. So the x is going to change sign. So negative 6, positive 6. For y equals x, so we're flipping diagonally. Right? We can flip back and forth diagonally. So all we have to do is switch the x and the y coordinates. So if you look at this one, this was negative 5, 2. This one's 2, negative 5. So you just switch the x and the y's order, and you'll have your new point. So negative 1, 4 became 4, negative 1. Okay. So we're going to try some examples of this so you can see it. So first we'll do it with a graph. So we're going to flip the x-axis, the y-axis, and the y equals x line. So we'll start with the x-axis. So when we do the x-axis, so I'm going to draw a dotted line here so we remember which one is the x-axis. So we're going to flip over that dotted line. So point by point, I want to see how far are they from the dotted line, and then we'll just go that many spaces after the dotted line. So we'll start with J. J is 1 space from the x-axis. So to get the new J, I'm going to go 1 more space after the x-axis. So new J is going to be here. When you do the new point, to show that it's the new one, you give it a little apostrophe. We call this prime. So this is called J. This one's called J prime. Right? This means it's the new one, just so we know which one is new and which one is old. Right? So J prime will go 1 above the x-axis. For K, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So I'm going to take K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 more spaces. So K is going to be here. Right? And then for L, L is 1, 2, 3. So go 3 more up. L prime will be in this spot. I'm just going to draw my triangle. And I'm done. So you're going to count the spaces from the x-axis. Right. So that's the x-axis. For y-axis, you follow the same procedure, except this time we're using the y-axis. So when we count, we want to count across to the x-axis instead of up to the, across to the y-axis. So we'll start with L this time. L's 1 away. So go 1 more for new L, or L prime. K is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 for K prime. J, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 for J. So our new triangle is on the other side of the y-axis here. And for the line y equals x, so I'm going to draw it. So you start in the middle and just hit the corners of all those little boxes there. That's the line you're reflecting across. It'll be helpful to draw that dotted line so you know where to count to. So we're going to do the same thing. So if you look here, I'm going to go across 1, 2 squares. So then go 1, 2 more for new J. Right? 2 and 2. L is 1, 2, 1, 2. And K is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 for K. We've got our new triangle here. I think I put my L in the wrong. L was supposed to be, okay, that's better. L. So for each one, you determine what line you're going across. So x-axis, y-axis, or y equals x. And you count how far it is from the dotted line, and then go the same amount of spaces the other direction. Right? That's how you do it when you're drawing a graph. If you don't have a graph and you just have points, we have another way of doing it. So you could draw a graph if you wanted to, or if you want a shortcut, you can follow that. For x-axis, so if you remember back on that first slide, I gave you these rules here. So we're going to use these this time. So x-axis, you make the y negative. Go back to my thing. So your point, the original, becomes negative y. So if for each of these, I'm going to write my points down. These are my original. So d prime will become, I'm just going to make the y negative. So negative 2 is the same, but now the y, instead of a negative 1 that I started with, it's going to become a positive 1. For e prime, negative 1 stays the same, 3 becomes negative 3. And for f prime, 3 stays the same, negative 1 becomes positive 1. So all my y's changed, but my x's stayed the same. Right? So switch the sign on the y. To flip over the y-axis, you take the original point and you make the x negative. So my original points, so new d prime, I'm making my x negative, right? Negative negative 2 is positive 2. And then y stays the same. Negative 1 becomes positive 1. 3 stays 3. 3 becomes negative 3, and negative 1 stays negative 1. For y, to flip the y-axis points, you make the x have the opposite sign. Y stays the same. In our first one, we had y had the opposite sign. Right. For the last one, with the y equals x, you take the original point and you switch the order of the x and the y. Right. So all my originals I'll write down first. Okay, so we're switching the order. So d prime will be negative 1, negative 2. E prime will be 3, negative 1. And f prime will be negative 1, 3. So for y equals x, switch the order of x and y. That's it. So now it's your turn. You try these 3 points. So pause the video, try them out, and then unpause to see how you did. Okay, so for x-axis, you want to make the y negative. So y becomes x negative y. So this will become a prime is 2, negative 3. B prime would be 4, positive 2. And f prime would be negative 7, positive 3. For y-axis, you make the x negative. So a prime would be negative 2, 3. B prime would be negative 4, negative 2. And f prime would be 7, negative 3. And for y equals x, you take your x, y, and you switch the order. So a prime would be 3, 2. B prime would be negative 2, 4. And f prime would be negative 3, negative 7. And there's that. If there's anything you're confused about from this lesson, please come to office hours and we can